All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here, and I'm coming to you from Ein Bokek on the Dead Sea in Israel. We just crossed into Israel today, and we have our second ever live studio audience. With me today are our wonderful tour group, all these people who are Hot Zone viewers like you, and they've all come out to sit here and watch tonight, and we're going to do some live question and answer in a little while. So stay tuned. Now, isn't that cool? We're at a beautiful resort on the Dead Sea. Now, as you know, it's probably 1,000 feet below sea level or something, so it's still pretty warm out here. And if these people start passing out, it's not because I'm boring; it's because it's hot out there. So don't blame me. We have had a really good tour. I'll just talk for a second about this, so stay tuned. We've had a really good tour so far. We've been in Jordan for the last few days. We've gone to some amazing historical sites. We went to Petra. Was that yesterday? Was that only yesterday? We went to, holy cow. And we went to Aqaba last night, to the Red Sea. One of the very interesting things that happens when you're down in that region is that if you pull up the maps on your phone, all of a sudden it shows that you're somewhere else. It's like time travel. You can be sitting in Aqaba and pull up the map on your phone, and suddenly it says you're in the airport in Amman or Cairo, or something like that. And that's because Israel is jamming the GPS signals in the whole region, for obvious reasons, because of the missile attacks that they've been suffering from the Houthis and from Iran in that area. So thank you, One Tired Mama, Nathan, and who, I don't know if our other, is Snow White on? And Connie, at least, for being moderators tonight. They're going to keep the chat clean and tidy. We had, the first night we were here, it got pretty exciting because as we were in the hotel there right after dinner, the shofar alarm started going off on my phone and my watch, and it just was going crazy. And then we took a look, and the entire country of Israel was under missile warning. And that's the first time I've seen that happen. So that was interesting. And then we went back to our rooms and started noticing missiles going over our heads, coming from Iran on one side, and then the counter missile systems coming from the Israeli side. And they were literally meeting right over our hotel. And so obviously, these people, what do you think they were doing? Running to the shelter? No, there was no shelters. They were running outside with their phones and filming the whole thing. The only person that was curled up in a fetal position under his bed was me. No, I'm kidding. I was outside doing a live. But Bob wasn't here then, so he would have, I don't know, probably been trying to catch him or something. I got the shrapnel for his collection. Bob has a pretty serious shrapnel collection, I imagine. So I just want to show you where we've been. I'm going to pull up the map here. And right now we're in Ein Bokek, which is, right, as I said, right on the Dead Sea on the Israeli side. Now let me go over here and get on the map. And so if I zoom out, you can see here. So we flew into Amman, and then we went down to Kerak, which is there's a Crusader castle there. And then we went down here to Petra, and all the way down to this corner in Aqaba. It was pretty interesting last night because you could see the lights from Saudi Arabia here, Egypt over on this side, Eilat here in the little corner of Israel. And of course, we were in Aqaba, so 4 countries all in that area. And not a lot of ship traffic because all of this is still being blockaded by the Houthis down here in Yemen. And they're blockading the Bab al-Mandab Straits and the Gulf of Aden. So they've been continuing to make a nuisance of themselves. They're shooting at basically anything that moves out there, but they would really, really like to shoot down an American, sink an American ship. And So just the other day, they fired like a dozen uncrewed vehicles, both, I believe, air and sea vehicles, at an American destroyer. The American destroyer swatted them all like flies. And then yesterday or day before, they finally bombed something inside Yemen. Now, I was going to say they retaliated, but actually, as it turns out, according to one of their press releases, that was not in retaliation for the failed attack on the destroyer, because we wouldn't want to offend anybody in Yemen by actually retaliating when they attack us, apparently. So this was completely unrelated, according to John Kirby. And they bombed a bunch of warehouses. They say they were weapons caches and military sites. And they did bomb the port in Hodeidah and the airport there with about 8 different things. Now, if you wonder, like, what kinds of things could they be aiming at? Look, as I've mentioned before, Yemen is just a giant dirt parking lot. There's not much worth trying to take out on the ground except for their military capabilities. Now, I wonder how careful, I wonder if we're being so careful in our response to Yemen because we know that they have Russian advisors in Yemen assisting Yemen in their targeting, helping them find and fix targets out in the Red Sea. If that's the case, I think the Biden administration wants to be kind of careful that they don't somehow end up killing a bunch of Russian advisors, even though I don't know that they should be worried a whole lot about that, because if they did, it's kind of like one of those, hey, those guys paid their money and they took their chances. We have done it before in Syria when the United States saw from an aerial platform a whole bunch of Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group sneaking up on one of our bases where we had a lot of American troops in Syria. And they have a, believe it or not, even though Russia is not our friend, especially right now, there is actually a phone number we can call if we need to talk to them, the military to military. They call it a deconfliction line. And that's so that we don't have an international incident take place between 2 nuclear-armed powers. So apparently they called the deconfliction line and said, hey, you need to tell your guys to back off because they're coming up on one of our bases. This is in Syria. And the Russian guy on the other end of the line said, we don't have any troops in your area. And they said, okay, fine. They hung up and they smoked 300 or so Wagner troops. Again, this was several years ago. So this was during the Trump administration when we didn't have so much of a problem offending our enemies in our attempts to end their ability to harm us. Now, the administration we have is of the belief that you should be able to defeat your enemy without actually making him angry at you. And that's not a workable plan for the most part. So whatever they did take out, we probably, at least if past is any indication, will not have a large effect on the Houthis' ability to continue to make a nuisance of themselves in the Red Sea area. And it certainly is not going to get ships flowing into the Red Sea anytime soon, or the port of Eilat. Now, that was the first time, however, in months that the United States has actually targeted Houthis on the ground. We have had U.S. Navy ships in that area supposedly protecting the commercial shipping that wants to go through there for almost the entirety of this war. And it's been 3 or 4 months since the United States actually struck back at the Houthis. But in that time, they have taken over several commercial ships. They've burned a couple of tankers that they captured at sea. caused a potential catastrophic environmental emergency, and the United States has done like nothing to do anything about it. We could very easily send a team of Navy SEALs to retake those ships that they have captured and to really hurt the feelings of some of the guys that were, involved. And we could, without too much trouble because of the sea power we have in that region, mount a campaign to definitely make the Houthis start to reconsider their life choices. But we haven't. And who can't see the map? Who can't see it? No, there it's on the screen. So, okay, we got 2,500 people online, folks, and as you're just joining us, we got a live studio audience here. All these people standing there staring at me, or sitting there staring at me back there, are also Hot Zone viewers who came with us on a tour to Israel and Jordan, and we've been having a great time for the last few days, and we've got quite a bit more to see. But they wanted to come just see how glamorous it is for me to sit here and talk to myself looking at my laptop for an hour. And so here they are. Are you guys having a good time? Oh, yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So I think they would suggest that you look into joining us on one of our tours. We just opened up, excuse me, our June 2025 tour to Armenia. And if you haven't been to Armenia, you're missing out. I'll just say that without a doubt. I've been to more than 100 countries, and it is one of the most amazing places I've ever seen in my life. And one of the reasons we do multiple tours every year to Armenia is because of that fact. Okay, so, yeah. Mercy asked why we're not in a bomb shelter. So I wanted to get to that. I guess that now is as good a time as any. I've seen a lot of chatter on the interwebs, on X and different places, about the impact of the Iranian attack that took place a few days ago on Israel. And some of the old favorites like Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor are out there saying that Israel got damaged very, very badly, that their morale is in the toilet, and they are just about to crumble and lose this war because of that attack by Iran. Now, keep in mind that neither of those guys and none of those people who are talking like that are actually here in Israel, but we are, right? Yeah, we're here in Israel. And I have to say, when we showed up at the Dead Sea today, I wouldn't say that the people we saw bathing in the Dead Sea, walking along the boardwalk, enjoying the spa and the swimming pool here at the resort that we're at, were especially concerned. See, Israel has been under this kind of threat for so long that the people here have learned to deal with it. And they have bomb shelters everywhere you go. This hotel we're in has a bomb shelter as well. And so if there's they have a very good system that will alert you if there's a possibility, of a tubular complaint coming your way from someplace. And if that happens, you usually, especially here in the central part of the country, you've got a few minutes to get to the shelter. If the closer you go to the borders, the less time they have. And when you get up close to the borders, you might only have seconds, or even sometimes the tubular complaint might arrive before the alarm goes off. But for the most part, they have a very good system. And if we hear a siren go off, we will have time to go to the shelter. Now, a lot of people, we've noticed in Israel, actually don't go to the shelters anymore because the Iron Dome system is so good that the first thing they do is go outside and start filming. And they just want to film the interceptions over their heads. Does anybody here feel like you're in terrible danger at the moment? Anybody? No. From you, Chuck. No, only from me. Probably the most dangerous thing that we have had to contend with is these annoying little kids that try to sell you everything wherever you go. But No, it's just not. It's not like that. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring people here is to help get the word out, to counter that misinformation. Look, the people who are telling you that Israel is about to crumble, that they were terribly damaged, near being destroyed by the attack from Iran the other day, they're not here. And they probably know that what they're saying is a lie, but they have a political agenda. And that political agenda is anti-Israel. And so they're going with it. What has always surprised me since this war started is just how much I've learned that the spectrum of left to right politically is actually more of a circle. Because in this conflict, the people who are most vehemently anti-Israel are far on the left and far on the right. And the farther you go, the more likely they are to actually agree on stuff, at least when it comes to this conflict. And that's really strange to me. But, okay, so can you please point out where Yemen is on the map for those of us who do not know exactly? Yeah, it's right here. If you look down to the south of Saudi Arabia, let me point to it. I got to get over there. There's Sana'a. This is the country of Yemen down here. Now, Yemen is 1,800 kilometers from the military base at Nevatim, where the jets are housed in Israel. And Israel just managed to complete successfully a major strike on Yemen's infrastructure. And the reason that 1,800 kilometers is important to remember is because Iran is only 1,600 kilometers from Israel. And so the veiled threat there, not so veiled threat, is that Israel could easily do the same to Iran. Now, I want to tell you, I believe that they will shortly make good on that. I believe that you will shortly, in the next few days, see Israel hit Iran in a way that they have not been hit before. Now, if you want to see a very good breakdown about how that could take place and all the nitty-gritty of the military machinations that have to go into planning an operation like that, because it's extremely complex, lots of moving parts. I want to recommend you go check out my friend Ryan Macbeth here on YouTube. His most recent video breaks down just how Israel could possibly strike at Iran. And what he limits himself to in this case is how it could strike at Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, Iran has about 6 different nuclear facilities, major nuclear facilities. Most of them are very deep underground. Many of them are in difficult mountainous terrain. And so when you say deep underground, they're under like maybe 6,000 or 8,000 feet of rock. And so it's going to be really difficult to pull a stunt like they did in Lebanon the other day when they got Hassan Nasrallah, because there's no bunker buster bomb in the world that's going to penetrate that much rock and get down to where those things are housed. The best they could do would be to take out the entrances of those things and maybe some of the supporting infrastructure, like what supplies power down there, because they need that for the centrifuges and things like that. So I'm going to say, rather than what Ryan suggests as far as a what if that Israel might strike at Iran's nuclear facilities, I'm going to say it would be more likely, knowing what we know about Israel and how they like to be clever and not go for the obvious hit, but go for the thing that nobody thought of. I mean, as he said in his video, the Operation Grim Beeper was not on anybody's bingo card. Nobody had thought of that one except the Mossad. And there's no reason to believe that the Mossad doesn't have equally nefarious, creative ways of striking at Iran. And all we have to do is look back at history and look at the Stuxnet virus and things like that were perpetrated against their nuclear program to see that Israel's strike, when it comes, doesn't necessarily have to be an airstrike. It doesn't have to be missiles. It doesn't have to be airplanes. It could very well be something far more creative than that. And so we'll just wait and see. But if I had to guess, just knowing what we know about Israel, knowing what we know about their capabilities, knowing what we know about the facilities in Iran and what might hurt them the most, I've been guessing that Israel won't focus on their nuclear facilities. They will focus on their oil and gas infrastructure because about 50% of the Iranian government's revenue comes from their oil and gas industry, which is heavily sanctioned, by the way. And so they're not selling that stuff to reputable nations around the world. They're selling it to countries like China and North Korea and places like that. So if Israel were to strike at their not their nuclear facilities, but their oil and gas facilities, they could really cripple an economy that's already crippled. And it would have an outsized impact on the government of Iran as opposed to the people of Iran. And so that and maybe some military bases might be the centerpiece of the strike that we might be about to witness. Now, Ryan talks about the fact that the amount of airplanes and the distances involved make this a very complex operation. Iran does have a lot of anti-aircraft defenses, but none of them are any match at all for the F-35s that Israel has in its inventory, or even some of the older planes, F-16s and stuff that they have as well. But those planes, the F-35s and the F-16s and the F-15s and stuff, they have to be refueled because they can't make it to Iran and back on one tank of gas. And so there's going to have to be some refueling tankers orbiting somewhere where they can come back and refuel in order to make it back home. So where might that be? Well, Iraq is not going to like having a bunch of Israeli, they have 7 KC-135 variant tankers in the Israeli inventory. There's 7 of them. Probably 5 of them that work just because that's how aircraft are. Only 70 or 80% are probably even going to be functional at any given time. So they're going to have to be orbiting somewhere. And Iraq is, if they're not going to be able to see most likely the F-35s, but they're definitely going to see these gas tankers flying around in their airspace, and they're not going to like that at all. So they could potentially fly around down here over the Persian Gulf, maybe over Kuwait, maybe over Syria, just because Syria, in this part of the eastern part of Syria over here, we'll zoom in here. You see the Euphrates River, that's this green stripe going down here. Everything to the east of that is controlled by the Kurds. So this is essentially another country now, which the Kurds call Rojava. And I've been there many times. So that area of Rojava is close enough to Iran that potentially those aircraft could do circles over in this corner of Syria and not cause too many problems. As long as they don't get too close to Turkey, because Turkey does probably have the ability to shoot them down if they got too close. But it just depends on how far they're going to try to go inside Iran. Now, Iran is a bigger country than you think. If you were to overlay Iran over the United States, it would go from Florida to South Dakota. So it's, a half or 2/3 the size of the United States in terms of its area. Now, the oil facilities are all located on an island right down here, and it's that one island is the kind of the Achilles heel of their energy infrastructure. So that would obviously be a major target if Israel was looking to strike that. They could then, if that's the case, have their tankers doing circles over the Persian Gulf and probably not have too many problems. They could maybe do it over Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia wouldn't want to admit to that. And so we probably would never know if that's where they were actually flying over Anyway, you see kind of the issue here. They're going to need, every plane is going to need, in order to be refueled, about 25 minutes. And with 5 tankers, if they used all of their available planes, you're talking about a pretty complex operation. And then they've got to go all the way back to Israel in order to rearm, because there's one thing that a KC-135 tanker cannot do, and that's put new missiles and bombs on the fighter aircraft, the bomber aircraft. So it's kind of a one-way deal for Israel. And if they're going to strike like that, they would probably want to have as many aircraft in the air that could drop ordnance as possible. Now, all of this is speculation because, like I said, Israel prides itself on being clever, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit if we see something that nobody had even considered being done. But we'll just have to wait and see. Now, when will this happen? This is the big question. Now, if I had to guess, and I always say I don't like to make predictions. There are just far too many variables that can get in the way, and so I'm never going to say that I'm good at making predictions or anything like that. I was a stockbroker for 10 years, and it was my job to make predictions, and I don't think I did a very good job of it back then. So I'm not going to say that I do that a lot now. But, I mean, you have to admit, day after tomorrow being the 1-year anniversary of the attacks on Israel, and, you know, just the political theater that it would represent to strike at Iran on that day, it might all be too much for the Israeli government to pass up. It just might. So I'm just saying. Now, for its part, Iran has said, okay, punch, no punchbacks. We hit you. Now it's all over. You can't hit us back. But if you do, not only are we going to strike back at Israel, but we are going to strike energy infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in the UAE, and in Azerbaijan. So now what Iran is trying to do is they're trying to hold hostage all of the countries around them and try to put pressure on those countries to put pressure on Israel not to retaliate for the strike the other day. Now, you can imagine how happy that makes Saudi Arabia, and you can imagine how happy that makes Azerbaijan and, you know, these other countries. I don't know that that's going to be a real effective strategy on the part of Iran. If Iran really wanted a regional war and really wanted to lose that regional war, this would be the way to do it. Like, you couldn't construct a scenario that would more likely result in Iran's, getting hit from all sides to the point where their system and their government collapses, which, ironically enough, would be probably the best thing that could happen to the Iranian people. Now, I have heard from some of my viewers who are in Iran. We love our Iranian friends. We've met many of them in Armenia when we're there. And I love the I love the Iranian people that I have met. They've been super nice. And they, as it turns out, really like Americans. Even the ones that are not Iranian Christians, they're Muslims, but they run into you in Armenia, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And like, "I'm from America." And they're like, "No way, that's so cool!" And they like Americans. So don't fall into the trap of thinking that Iran is just full of evil people that all want to kill Americans or Israelis. It's not. And believe me, if the Iranian government crumbled and ceased to exist tomorrow, the people of Iran would have celebrations like you have never seen. And so let's pray that whatever happens, no innocent lives in Iran will be lost. Now, on that note, some of my viewers in Iran have written and have told me that they have friends who work in the energy sector in Iran, and a lot of them have been calling in sick lately because they're all expecting that something bad might happen to, they would hate to spontaneously combust in the course of their duties at work. So they're they're calling in sick with, something that will keep them out of work for some time in order to avoid that until whatever happens is going to happen actually happens. Okay. Now, yes, please hit the like button, folks. We've got almost 5,000 people online and only 1,200 likes. So either you really hate what I'm saying or you just haven't thought to go hit that like button. It really does help. We can track it on the analytics on the page. When you go hit that like button, it tells YouTube to go show that video to a whole bunch more people. And so I'm going to be talking more about what may be about to happen in Israel and the effects. Yeah. Oh, all right. I've kept the map up long enough. Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to be talking about what Israel has been doing in taking out the leadership of Iran and its proxies in just a second. But first, I just want to run through the comments here because I haven't really been paying attention to them. Wanted to see if there's any important questions you've had. Okay. Do you have a guess as to why Tennessee sent 700 National Guard to Kuwait? Denise, there are always U.S. troops in Kuwait, and there have been for many, many years. I've been to some of those bases. I spent my 40th birthday on one of those bases in a tent out in the desert all by myself. And that was just a couple years ago, I'd like to say. It's not a big deal to see National Guardsmen going to Kuwait because it's a regular rotation of troops going through there. My son, when he was in the Army, he went through Kuwait for a little while. And so that doesn't have anything especially to do with this conflict. It's just a natural rotation that's going on. Good question, though. Thank you for asking that. And I also want to say that I've heard from a lot of you who have been affected by the storms that really wiped out all kinds of stuff in North Carolina and Georgia and elsewhere. And we are praying for you guys. And I hope that you can get the aid that you need. I know that the Operation Blessing through CBN has been taking aid in there. But if you have a specific need, you can pass it to me and I will pass it on to Operation Blessing. And if it's a big enough impact that they can have, they might actually come and help meet that need. So you can do that. Thank you very much. PC asks, will Israel go after the supreme leader? That is a very good question. And that segues into what I'm about to talk about. So let me get to that in this section that we'll start right now. So Israel in the past few weeks has taken out a tremendous number of commanders and high-ranking officials in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC of Iran, and their proxy organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis. I don't know why they're so partial to names that start with H, but there you go. Now, first of all, why is Israel doing this? Why is it focusing on this? Because when you take out the commanders, you really just create upward mobility for the guys below them, and a bunch of people get promotions. But how does this help Israel? First of all, it disrupts Israel's operations. I'm sorry, it disrupts the operations against Israel. That when they target the commanders, those guys that are organizing everything and putting together the plans for the next attack get waxed, and now they kind of puts them back to square one in many cases. So this most recent strike that took place in Lebanon, where the guy who replaced Hassan Nasrallah, okay, so you know that they wiped out Hassan Nasrallah the other day. The new guy that replaced him didn't make it 12 hours and he got whacked. And then the new guy that replaced that guy just got whacked yesterday. And so you can bet they're having a really hard time filling that slot because anybody else that's in that chain of command is not answering their pager right now for sure. But they probably are calling in sick as well. They may be calling in dead because those guys, a lot of them were in the room. So when they whacked the most recent commander of Hezbollah, he was actually meeting with the Shura Council, whose job it is to pick the next leader. So that entire council got a one-way ticket to Boomtown with the top guy as well. So now it'd be like when they have to choose a new pope, they have a bunch of people who meet in a secret room, all these bishops and stuff, and then they vote, and then they write down if it's white smoke or black smoke, whether or not you have a new pope. Well, in this case, all of the smoke is the actual guys that were making the decisions. And so that is going to definitely put a crimp in their style and kind of ruin their weekend, if you know what I mean. So imagine the impact that has on the rest of the forces. If all of the guys that you've been looking up to are spontaneously combusting one after the other, and it's getting closer and closer to you, and now you don't have a way to communicate, you don't have anybody to communicate with, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, and you're just running around with your hair on fire, in some cases literally, that is a really demoralizing factor, as you can imagine, for these proxy agents. They keep whacking these guys when they're in a meeting, and the meetings are full of guys from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So Iran keeps sending people out there to try to pull these guys together and give them some cohesive focus, and then get them back to work at being a nuisance to Israel. And as soon as they get there, they pull up around a table, and that table gets vaporized by Israel. So this has got to be incredibly frustrating for them. It leaves a vacuum of leadership. Now, the question is, what will the outcome of this be? Will the rest of these guys just take their toys and go home? Well, no, they probably won't. As a matter of fact, we will probably see an intensification of the violence before the violence goes down. And that's because these guys are just so mad. They figure, well, obviously my boss that just got nailed by an Israeli warplane probably would want me to do something to avenge him. So I'm going to fire off whatever munitions I'm in charge of. And that's pretty much what we've been seeing. So if you look at the Shofar app today, yesterday, the day before, all day long, we're just seeing low levels of incursions from tubular complaints coming across from Hezbollah toward like Haifa, all the way over to the Galilee and everything like that. And remember, each one of those little red dots on the Shofar app does not represent a missile strike or even, in that area. It just means that that's an area that might be under threat in this particular salvo coming across. And so they're firing 5 or 6 at a time, but that comes out to about double what they were doing. She's about to jump on your camera. About double what they were doing before their leadership all got whacked. And so we're talking 200, 250 a day coming across. So far, there have been very, very few injuries. Actually, the majority of the injuries that they've seen have been from people running to the shelters and tripping. There have been more injuries from people tripping on the way to the shelter than there have been from the effect of the actual munitions. And so there you go. All right. Now, let's talk about the most recent guys that have been hit. Ibrahim Akil was a senior Hezbollah commander, and he was actually part and parcel of the 1983 bombings of the U.S. Embassy and the Marine barracks in Beirut. And the United States have been looking for him for a long time, and now the IDF has taken him out. That is at least the third major commander who was involved in that attack on U.S. troops, which killed 241 Marines back in 1983. It's at least the third one that Israel has taken off the map in the last few weeks. These are guys that the United States has been looking for 3 decades and couldn't get them. Probably knew where they were, but did not have the intestinal fortitude or the political will to go after them. And now Israel is taking the gloves off, and they're saying, we'll take care of it. So he's one of them. Of course, you remember Fuad Shukr. That was a big blow to Hezbollah. And Hassan Nasrallah, of course, it got him. There's another guy, Saleh al-Aruri. He was a senior Hamas commander in Lebanon. Yes, you heard that right. He wasn't Hamas in Gaza. He was a Hamas commander in Lebanon. And they took him out. And then just recently, they took out Hashim Safeddin, who was the top guy on the list after everybody else got wiped out. And he was the guy in charge of Hezbollah's executive council, which is the group of guys that he was liquidated with, who were there to pick a new leader. So that's just the Hezbollah and Hamas guys. Then you get into the IRGC guys that have been hit. Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Zahedi was the commander of the IRGC Quds Force in Syria and Lebanon. He was a very important figure. Some of these guys, let's see, which one was it? Syed Rezi. I'm trying to remember which one. I think it might have been him. Mohammad Zahedi was the replacement for Soleimani, who was killed during the Trump administration. And Israel just took him out. So Iran is having a really big leadership vacuum right now. And this is a big problem. So a big problem for them. It's not a big problem for Israel. And they're just taking them down like dominoes. So that's your good news for this Saturday, October 5th. Now, let's talk about, let's talk to some of our live studio audience here. Again, we've got people here they're all viewers of the Hot Zone, and they've been quietly sitting here watching, seeing how absolutely boring it is to sit here and watch this thing. So along with the nearly 5,000 people we have online, we also have about 50 people in our group here tonight. So we're going to take some questions from them or some comments. Who's got something to say? Go ahead, give him the microphone. Dylan? Okay, Mac?
Hey, Chuck. We got to see in Jordan, Petra, yesterday, and it was absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was there, I learned that they had, before the war, they had 5,000 people a day visiting Petra. And finding out they're lucky if they get 250.
Now,
what do you think is going to happen to that country, and how's this conflict affected the other countries? Has it affected them the same?
It's a very good question. It's an incredible irony that the strike on October 7th against Israel has ended up damaging the economies of all of the countries in the region, and especially the country of Jordan, which is 60% Palestinian. So those, quote unquote, brave operatives from Hamas who struck a blow for the Palestinian cause actually struck a blow to their Palestinian brothers and hurt and harmed. Obviously it was a terrible tragedy and that the Israelis that died, but there have been far more Palestinians who have died now in this conflict, far more than Israelis. And that's to say nothing of the economic, hit on this country and Egypt and many others in the region.
Thanks. I mean, it was beautiful, but it's like we were the only ones there.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? So. Yeah, it's nuts. Who else? Scott, come over here where they can see you, would you? Tell you what, Scott. Here, you can sit right here.
So October 7th is 36 hours away. Do you think that Israel has a higher chance that they might respond on the 7th, or that there's going to be some activity in the region on that same
Well,
day?
here we can't see you, but sit up. Oh no, there you are. Okay. There is as I said, just from a political theater standpoint, it's got to be a very tempting date for Israel to strike back at Iran. But Israel has already put out warnings, as has the U.S. State Department, that the chances of Israel suffering a major attack from one of the proxies goes up exponentially on the 7th. And I've already mentioned to many of you, there's a very high likelihood that you will hear an air raid siren while you're here. And if that happens, please don't injure yourself trying to run to the shelter or to run outside to take pictures. Okay? Just calmly, figure out what you need to do and then go do it. But I think that there's an extremely high likelihood we'll see some excitement on October 7th, one way or the other. Yeah. Who else? Dylan? Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So with the weakening of Iranian leadership and
Put up here, Oscar.
With the weakening of Iranian leadership, the discontent of his people, and the son of the Shah kind of waiting to arise, do you think there might be changes in Iran?
Well, I don't necessarily think, I forgot to answer that question, so thank you I don't necessarily think that Israel is going to try to assassinate the leader of a country. Taking out Hassan Nasrallah or Wasmail Haniya they're commanders of these criminal organizations, basically. No problem taking those guys out. But it's a kind of unspoken rule that you don't go after the leaders of other countries. It's a professional courtesy among politicians, basically. So I don't think that Israel would directly target him. I think the way that he gets taken out is that the government gets crippled so badly and gets weakened by economic sanctions, economic strikes like they might do on their infrastructure. And then that eventually leads to the people being able to overcome the forces that are protecting the government and overthrow their government and institute something new. So go ahead. Just pass it right to him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rando.
Chuck, along that line.
Talk into the green light.
Chuck, along that line, same thing with Scott. And the last question, both of those questions is not just along what are the motivations along the lines of the timing, and you mentioned the oil infrastructure. What do you think the other targets might be for the retaliation?
Not just oil infrastructure, but it could be electrical infrastructure, because the electrical infrastructure powers the centrifuges that Iran needs to create fissile material that they can put into nuclear weapons. And so if they take out the power infrastructure in Iran, especially the ones that power those facilities, they don't necessarily need to blow up the facility. It's a much easier target to go after.
Do you think they'll strike the facilities?
No, well, like I said at the beginning, I think that there's much better use of their munitions than trying to blow up a 11,000-foot rock, mountainside. And so if they can disable the facility, that's almost as good as destroying it, right? And they can do that without destroying the facility. Go ahead. Terry?
How much bombs would it take, missiles, to overwhelm the dome for protection? So, because
how many would it take to overwhelm the Iron Dome? Well, obviously that would be a very closely guarded secret. If that would not be something that Israel would like to have known, because then that becomes a goal for Iran, right? So if they said, if they It's almost like Samson in the Bible, you know, where you say, oh, well, if you just tie my hair in a loom, that would do it, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, and all the other proxies could also.
Right. So they are not going to publicize the capabilities of that system in terms of quantity that they can shoot down. But there are some inferences we can make from what we saw the other night. And that is, Dylan, Dylan's the microphone guy. The inferences that we can make from what we saw on, what was that, Monday, or whatever. What day was that? Monday, Wednesday? I forget when that happened. Anyway, is that the way the system works is it prioritizes what it's going to try to intercept based on the number and even the type of munition that's coming at them. So it's, well, yes, I mean, obviously, if it's going to land somewhere where there's no people, then it's not even, they don't bother with it. They just let it go. And so this is why there have been these commentators, for lack of a better term, on the internet that have been saying that there's lots of video proof out there that Israel got all but destroyed by the strike the other night, because you can see these missiles coming in and detonating on the ground. You can see explosions and stuff. That's true. First of all, almost all of the videos that are out there, at least the ones I've seen, are from detonations that took place in the West Bank. And the West Bank is largely open area. There's a lot of open desert out there. And so the people filming them were in built-up areas, filming into not built-up areas, watching the impacts of these things come raining down. The circular area of probability of many of the munitions that were fired can be up to 3 kilometers. That's like a mile, over a mile. And so it's going to be really hard for Iran to strike at, to actually hit what they're aiming at, right? The only way they can hope to hit what they're aiming at is to get enough missiles in there that it will overwhelm that system, and then some of them will land close enough to actually hurt something. The United States put out a report today from U.S. intel agencies saying that they believe that 26 missiles impacted the Nevatim Air Base, and there was essentially no damage. And that's because the Nevatim Air Base, you can drive by it, it's enormous, but there's a lot of open area. And so these missiles were landing in desert that was inside the airbase, but it wasn't like a chow hall or a movie theater or a barracks or something like that, right? So they don't believe, the report said that they don't believe that any of Israel's aircraft were damaged in those strikes. And Israel has said, no, we're good. None of them got hit. There's a good chance that many of the aircraft were already in the air, because the aircraft can augment the Iron Dome system and help to shoot down other incoming munitions. They have a harder time with the hypersonic stuff, which is a lot of what was coming, but Israel might have had them in the air anyway, just in case something else came in at the same time. And so even if they had hit a hangar or something where those aircraft are housed, there's a good chance the aircraft weren't in the hangar, right? So you're hearing some of these pundits on the internet saying, oh, all of these videos are showing that all of their aircraft were destroyed. No, they weren't. They certainly weren't. And we've actually heard some of their aircraft overhead while we were in Jordan. So we know they still have aircraft, right? So getting back, go ahead.
So another question is, you know how they're coming, the Jews are coming back to
Yes.
help with this war. Well, on the other side, what about the Muslims that want to destroy Israel? Are they coming back to support Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran or
Yeah,
to
good question.
also?
There have been some who have congregated in Lebanon, who have come to Lebanon saying we're ready to, strike a blow at Israel, and it's likely that in this current ongoing operation that Israel has going into Lebanon, that they will encounter troops from maybe as far away as Chechnya, certainly some Syrians, maybe some Iraqis, that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, there are probably some Palestinians there. What we have been told, however, is that at least 120,000, and that was a while ago, people from Lebanon have fled out of Lebanon, running away and going to Syria and to Jordan. And I, talking to our drivers, saying, oh yeah, the airport in Jordan is full of people who have left Lebanon and fled through Syria down into Jordan in order to get out because there was no other way for them to get out. They don't want to go out of the airport in Beirut. So what that says is, yes, there might be some jihadis, for lack of a better term, going into Lebanon to try to join the fight, but there's a whole lot more than that who are going the other direction. Okay.
Hey, Chuck, you
Yes,
might
sir.
answer this before, but
This Eddie?
Yep.
Can we see Eddie over there? Yeah, okay.
When the missiles are flying here towards Israel, and I heard the U.S. is helping out, Jordan's shooting them down. Is like some missiles getting targeted 3 times, or how do they divide that up?
So the United States has a radar array in, actually very close to where we're sitting, just to the west of us, out in the desert. And I drove out there. It's the largest radar antenna in the Middle East, I believe. And it's a very small base. There's a couple hundred U.S. troops stationed there. Many people don't know that we have U.S. troops stationed here in this country. And they are on a war footing. And that base is there to plug into our system in the United States, the NORAD system and all that, to track potential incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles that might be coming toward the United States. But it also works to help track incoming munitions from the surrounding countries. This is part of the old THAAD missile system, THAAD, that has been around since the 1980s. And so some of this is conjecture. It's very likely, but this is not the kind of thing they're going to put out as fact. I'm not telling bad people anything that they couldn't find themselves on the internet by saying this. So I know I get always people saying, you're giving away too much information. No, I'm not privy to a bunch of military secrets that I'm leaking here. Okay.
About that right now. They're like, stop telling everybody.
Yeah. See that? Yeah. People are always like, no. Well, I'm sure that I have a lot of Hezbollah and Hamas who watch my show all the time. They're big fans of Chuck Holton, right? Because yeah. If you're part of Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis, please like and share this podcast. We want to get this message out to as many people as possible. And I know that especially in Yemen, this is got to be really popular among the high-tech set, right? These are people who throw their sandals at incoming rockets. Okay, so no, I'm not telling bad people things they don't need to know, and I won't do that. But to get back to your question, the United States is very likely that their system that's here is plugged into the Iranian system or has an interface with it that they can turn on and off if they want. And so in a time of crisis like that, where there's 200, then they now say it was 201 ballistic missiles that were fired at Israel while we were here. That was the largest ballistic missile attack in world history that we experienced the other night. Hang on. So the United States likely shares that information with Israel, and their systems, they're not people doing it. These are AI systems, are smart enough and can work together to prioritize and say, okay, you shoot down these ones, we'll shoot down those ones. We might even actually have a switch we can flip that gives the Iron Dome system control of our stuff. Now, that's not highly likely, but it is possible. It is doable. They say that the United States only fired like 25 anti-missile missiles from some ships out in the Gulf during that attack. So it wasn't that we really helped a lot, but it is also highly likely, especially in the case of Israel and Jordan, that some of these things were getting targeted more than once. Okay? The different systems that Israel has in place, from the Iron Dome, which is close in, terminal, okay, it's designed to shoot these munitions as they're on their short and final coming in just before they strike, okay? Not when they're way far away. The David Sling system is kind of a medium range system, so it can go out like maybe 60 kilometers and strike something that's still on its way here. And then the Arrow system that they have can literally shoot things out of space. If they're flying out of the Earth's atmosphere at 180, 200 kilometers away, whatever, the Arrow system can go up and intercept those as well. So their system has an artificial intelligence in it that prioritizes what's coming in, like forgets about the ones that are going to strike any area that's not built up, and then prioritizes the rest of them and parcels out. You imagine how complex this is? You see what a miracle this system is, right? When you start thinking about this, and that it's 99% successful. And you witnessed that firsthand the other day. Unbelievable what it can do. And it decides in microseconds which systems are going to target which munitions and which ones are going to need more than one fired at it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it parcels all that out. It is an absolute just freak of nature when it comes to technology. The guy that designed it was a genius. So, okay, you had a follow-up.
So with Iron Beam having an unlimited magazine, once effective and deployed, could greatly help with the...
It's going to be a game changer.
Yes. Have you heard anything about the progress? There's been very little in the news.
Yeah, I actually talked to the company that's building it, and they basically told me, like, obviously we can't talk about how close we are. You'll know when it's ready, believe me. I think that their biggest issue is the power generation on site to power this thing, because this is not a laser pointer, and it needs a god-awful amount of electricity to run this thing, and I think that's the biggest challenge to overcome. Other than that, they have a couple prototypes that are in service that have been used already, but my understanding, or at least what I thought we would be seeing them on the northern border by now, but we haven't. So there may be a bump in that road. I don't know what else. Okay. Yes.
Hey, Chuck. So with everything going on right now, it seems like Gaza is almost off the radar, but what's...
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, thanks. So, and I hear that there's a ceasefire and possible hostage return. Do you have any latest updates on that?
Latest I've heard on that is that Israel is still willing to talk, and the Biden administration and Egypt and Qatar are still pushing for talks, but no real progress is being made on those talks. We've talked about this many times before, that Israel is having such a run of victories right now that doesn't make you real conducive to wanting to talk a truce. If you're routing your enemy, you keep routing your enemy until he begs you to stop. And Hamas is not there yet. They say that there are probably still about 5,000 Hamas fighters in Gaza, and they are still fighting there every day. We'll get a chance to go down on the border of Gaza and actually see the effects of that, and maybe even hear some of the fighting ourselves. We'll just be a couple miles away from it in a few days. So maybe the next one we do, we'll talk about that some more and see how that.
Hey, Chuck, as you're answering my question, I remember about 6 weeks ago or somewhere that we flew in a couple big C-17s into Jordan that had our technology. So is that how Jordan is participating in shooting these down, with the stuff that we transported over there?
Yeah, Jordan actually has some Patriot missile batteries. And so they didn't announce what was on those military cargo planes, but it was likely more ammo for their Patriot missile batteries. If you had to get, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to look at that and go, yeah, that's probably what we just sent them. At the same time, Russia was sending military cargo planes into Iran, and they say that they may have maybe lent them one of their high-end electronic jamming units, which has never been proven in combat yet, and certainly never against F-35 technology. And that may be what they were doing, was sending it in there to try to use this conflict as a laboratory to find out, so that Russia could find out how well their newest generation of EW will play with our latest generation stuff. And I think that if that's the case, the United States would be like, bring it, make it happen. Okay, how are we doing on time? Okay, we're over an hour. Any last comments or questions? Anybody? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Ben. Okay, just talk into the green.
Yeah, Chuck, first thing, thank you to you and Connie for a phenomenal tour. Secondly, if you could be the fly on the wall in the conversations between Lieutenant General Kurilla and his Israeli counterparts, what, especially in the wake of the "this is what we could do to you if we wanted to" response of the last shoot, what do you think that conversation would be like?
Well, unfortunately, while General Kurilla is a proven warrior and was pardon the term, but it was straight up badass in the war in Afghanistan. There's a great article by my friend Michael Yon, who was with Kurilla when Kurilla was shot and managed to, I think, strangle the guy who shot him, before he got any medical care himself. But he's a warrior, but he has drank the Kool-Aid, and you can't get promoted to lieutenant general or to general, whatever he is now, without kissing the progressive ring when there's a progressive president. And so he is unfortunately very tainted in terms of his politics. And so likely the conversation that is going on between him and the IDF commanders are more along the lines of, you can't do this. We won't let you do that until after the election. The elections are the most important thing here. We have to, that's unfortunately what it is. So the conversations they're having are along the lines of how far will the United States go in supporting Israel in defending itself? And from what we've been told from the readouts of these things, what they're saying is, we will stand behind you, but we won't stand with you in this. Meaning, we'll be your cheerleader. We'll go, we'll provide you a little bit of signals intelligence, maybe, or something like that. But not if you're going to do something that we don't want you to do before the election. And striking Iran's nuclear capability is one of those things. They're very afraid about that in the United States. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. You got one more? Okay. Go ahead. How many people we got on?
But don't go all Army Ranger on me. So you said that Afghanistan became just a metal factory, promote, and they were just raising guys to the top of a flagpole because it was non-combat, but it was a combat situation. Do you think that the Navy, the U.S. Navy, is doing the same thing? They're just hanging out on the fringes of the battlefield, handing out medals like candy and going, okay, we're not in any danger. We're not really going to do anything, but we're just going to promote everybody.
It's a very good question, very astute. The United States military, I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to come across as being anti-American or, anything like that, down on military people. We've got the bravest troops on planet Earth. I really believe that. But the United States military has become very tainted by the politics of the day, especially the current administration. And so there is a very high political cost for getting a U.S. troop killed overseas. Because of that, I saw this trend start in Afghanistan about 2012 and has continued to get worse and worse and worse since then. Because of that fact, the United States military has become extremely risk averse and will not allow U.S. troops, by and large, to put themselves in any kind of danger. If there's anything dangerous that needs to be done, we have found it to be much more cost effective in terms of money and in terms of political capital to send contractors. And so the last few times I was in Afghanistan, I would go on combat missions and there would not be one single U.S. troop on the mission. Maybe 50 guys on the mission, a whole platoon, and they would be like the guy manning the machine gun in the door of the helicopter and the guy flying the helicopter would be from DynCorp, which is it's a private military contractor kind of thing. The guys on the ground would be maybe Norwegian Special Forces and a couple of DEA guys and maybe some, there'd be certainly a contingent of nationals from Afghanistan on the mission, but no U.S. troops. By and large, for the last few years in Afghanistan, U.S. troops were relegated to guarding concrete blocks, be there as a deterrent of just be there. And that was it. They weren't allowed outside the wire. And so we've seen more and more of that. Even, the war in Ukraine, we've sent something like 40,000 troops to the region, and they're set up in farmers' fields in Hungary and Poland and places like that. And they will go over there. My son was one of these, got deployed over there. How long was he there, babe? 10 months? Yeah, he was there for like 10 months in Poland. Yeah, sat in a tent in a farmer's field. What? Oh, 6 months. Sat in a tent in a farmer's field. They never did anything. They weren't allowed to do anything. They're just there to be there as a deterrent. And that kind of, yeah, there are thousands of them there.
But is that do you define that as being a soldier?
No. So ask that question again. Talk into the green light.
So from what you've just described, is that the redefining of what a soldier is?
They kind of are redefining what a soldier is, yes. A soldier, obviously, is just the guy in the army, and he's got to do what he's told. And so if the leadership won't allow him to do soldier stuff, then he becomes a policeman, he becomes a diplomat, he becomes a doormat, he becomes a placeholder. And this is what we are seeing in the U.S. military. The U.S. military is being corrupted away from being a truly functional fighting force. Case in point, the U.S. Navy, if you go to the shipyard in Virginia Beach, you will see lines of Navy ships parked out there with rust streaks all down their sides. And you think like, what in the world? We can't take care of our ships? No. The United States military made, in its ultimate wisdom, made a decision that they had to stop using the paint that they used that stopped the rust because it was harming the environment. Okay, so it's bad for the environment, so we're going to let our ships rust out now. And this is what we're seeing in the U.S. military. They still are using special operations, and that's kind of the new paradigm, is to send special operations guarded by a bunch of drones. And before long, it's going to be just send the drones. They're working on systems now that will all but remove the human operator from the battlefield in 40, 50% of the cases. And there will be robot truck drivers. There already are. We have lead follow systems in the military now, where if there's a convoy of aid or ammo or whatever that needs to go in, they'll have 7 or 8 trucks, big, heavy equipment transports, right? And there's only one driver in the very first lead vehicle. And he drives, and the other 6 vehicles are autonomous, and they follow right in the tracks of the lead vehicle. And so they don't need 7 drivers now, they just need 1. And before long, they won't need that one. They've got autonomous helicopters now that can deliver ammunition supplies out to the guys on the battlefield in a firefight. Go out and drop this stuff off. There's no human operator involved. The guy programs where it needs to go, and off it goes by itself. And it can even, well, they get blown up too, but it can even pick up wounded and bring them back. So you're going to see more and more of this. It's a big change that's coming, for sure. But without a doubt, the United States military is nowhere near the level of readiness that it needs to be. Okay. Yeah, give her the microphone back. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
So
good.
then my follow-up question to that, if the military is being redefined and as to what a soldier is going to look like in the future, then trickling down, I'm looking at the city, the police officer, at the state level, those persons who come in,
First responders and things like that.
the ones who, the guard,
Okay.
the state
Put that
national,
microphone up.
the National Guards. I hear a new way of using old words
Mm-hmm.
that gives you the impression of one thing,
Mhm.
an equivocation, in other words,
Yes.
but yet deploying these what used to be called soldiers,
Uh-huh. And calling them soldiers, but not letting them
but
be
not
soldiers.
soldiers.
Yes.
Police
I mean,
officers,
the
but
left
not
is all about
calling them or
redefining
allowing
everything.
them to be
you know?
police officers.
That's right.
Guards.
They're not letting the police
but
officers
not
be police
really
officers anymore either.
only to be guards, but just to enforce.
Right? Case in point,
And
you take a bunch of National Guardsmen who go to quell a riot, but they're not allowed to use to have any live ammunition. So they're standing out there in their uniforms with their guns. They don't even have magazines in their guns. What are they going to do? It's a sham. It's turning them into a caricature of what they were before, and that is not going to be effective when we come up against a truly determined enemy or even determined civilians. I was in Haiti after the earthquake there in 2010, and I went in with the Marines, and there was so much devastation, and they had to get food to the people. So we brought I was on the first helicopter that was bringing aid in, and they were going to land and just distribute the aid. But they couldn't even land because the people were so desperate. They were running under the helicopter, jumping, trying to get at the helicopter. And so they just kicked the aid out while they were hovering, and then watched people rip each other's arms off, fighting each other for the aid. And so they're like, well, that won't work. So then the next time they went into a soccer field, and with a company of Marines armed, and they ringed the soccer field, blocked it all off, and then started bringing in helicopters full of aid and stacking the aid up on the soccer field with the idea that they were going to distribute it once they had got it all in there. But before that happened, there were probably 100,000 people that showed up and were gathered around these Marines, and somebody said, they're not going to shoot us. And as soon as that happened, they just surged right past the Marines. They were right. The Marines didn't have that rules of engagement. They couldn't actually protect the aid. They were there to pretend to protect the aid. And as soon as somebody called their bluff, the Haitians came in and picked that place clean like a bunch of locusts in about 5 minutes. It was like zombie apocalypse. They just took it over. And then the Marines just stood there, and then they just got on their helicopters and went back home. So this is what they're turning soldiers into. This is what they're turning police into. It's what they're turning National Guardsmen into, in the mistaken belief that you can defeat your enemy without making him angry, without hurting his feelings, right? This is this very flawed doctrine of proportionality that the United States and Western countries have adopted. And it's a kinder, gentler way of war. Well, that only works if both sides adhere to the kinder, gentler way of war. Our enemies are barbarians. They don't do that. And so we need to allow our people to visit brutal violence on our enemies in order to keep them hiding in their holes and not being a threat to our people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Okay. On that note, we're going to end today because we got to get up in the morning. Thank you very much for being here, everybody, and I certainly appreciate it. God bless you all. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, folks. We certainly appreciate you as well. And hey, we'll do more tours like this, and so you're welcome to come along. Be watching at chuckholton.com. If you go over there, you can get a copy of the 2 books I just put out about how to survive the coming election chaos, what may happen in America after the elections. I've just written 2 books on the subject. I've been working on these for 10 years, and I just put them out. All you have to do is become a supporter on chuckholton.com, and you can get your copies of those in a PDF format, and maybe help to give me some feedback on them and help write them. So make sure you like and share the podcast. God bless you all.